May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for and waste my heart on fear no more. As a teenager, my friends flirted with risk, the way only people who aren't afraid to die do, because their frontal cortexes aren't fully developed yet. It's science. So weekends consisted of finding terrifying things to do to test the limits of their faith. In New Hampshire, that usually meant finding a very large height to jump off of into a body of water after drinking too much beer under the cover of night. And so my friends found half bridges over the river and abandoned quarries, spray-painted granite quarries, and even rickety old rope swings over the dark silk of the cold body of water below. And they jumped, and they jumped, and they jumped again. Thrilled screams penetrating the quiet night. I always stayed on shore with the beer, too afraid to even stand at the edge and contemplate jumping off. I had no faith in my ability to survive the jump. I did not trust the water to not swallow me up. I certainly didn't trust my drunk friends to save me. And so I spent those years watching others experience the wild joy and abandon of taking risks, not necessarily content to just sit and watch, but not brave enough to do anything else. My fear is probably the reason why I'm alive today. And also why I have so many regrets. I have always been cautious with my body, with my mind, with my heart. I have guarded so carefully my own life that I have failed at times to live it. Fear keeps us so small. You of little doubt, you of little faith. Jesus says, why do you doubt? Jesus hurls this accusation at Peter when he becomes frightened and begins to sink, trying to walk on water in the raging sea. But all I can think is that I wouldn't have had enough guts to get out of the boat when Jesus says, come, to begin with. Peter's faith can't be that little if he tried to walk on water in the midst of a terrifying storm, trusting that Jesus would pull him out. When he begins to sink, I don't blame him for doubting. Do you? I read this wonderful excerpt from a book called Dying a Memoir by Corey Taylor in the New Yorker this week. Did any of you see this article? Yes. I commend it to you. It is stunning and simple prose. She's an atheist, and yet her reflection on dying is what I can only describe as faithful and religiously profound. Corey Taylor was dying of cancer, as she wrote, and she agreed to answer questions you were too afraid to ask someone who is dying, submitted by people who are too afraid to ask questions to their friends out loud. In her answer about whether people who are dying are willing to take more risks, or whether she is willing to take more risks now that she is dying, this is what she says. No, I'm not likely to take more risks in life now that I know I'm dying. I'm not about to tackle skydiving or paragliding. I've always been physically cautious, preternaturally aware of all the things that can go wrong when one is undertaking a dangerous activity. Paradoxically, it was Dad, a peripatetic airline pilot, who taught me to be careful. I don't think he was temperamentally suited to flying. The risk played unhealthily on his mind and made him fearful, tetchy, depressed. At the same time, he was addicted to the thrill of flying and couldn't give it up. His ambivalence about danger confused me while I was growing up. He never discouraged me from taking up risky activities. Instead, he filled me with fear about the consequences, the possible consequences, with the result that I was never any good at any of them. When he taught me to drive, he made sure to emphasize the fallibility of the machine, something he would have learned during the war at flying school, where mistakes could be fatal. He liked to open the bonnet of the car before we set off and run through a sort of flight check with me to make sure everything was hooked up to everything else. These were good lessons, and they've served me well, but I wonder if a certain enthusiasm for risk drained out of me as a result of his teaching methods, and whether that wasn't his intent. It strikes me that I might have turned out differently if he'd taken me for a spin one day in one of the tiger moths he loved so much, shown me what had turned him on to flying in the first place, emphasized the mad joy rather than the danger. The irony is that despite my never having tempted death the way daredevils do, I'm dying anyway. Perhaps it is a mistake to be so cautious. And maybe, beloved, that is Jesus' lesson too. Even though risks make us fearful, tetchy, depressed, playing unhealthily in our minds, maybe we still need the thrill of flying anyway. Maybe Peter steps out of the boat because he knows it is a mistake to be so cautious. What do we have to lose, my friends? We are dying anyway. We need to do what we've come here for and waste our hearts on fear no more. Why love what you must lose, Louise Glick asks. There's nothing else to love. Perhaps having faith means loving what you know you will lose, even if what you will lose is life as you know it. Perhaps that's what Jesus means when he says that you have to lose your life to save it. That if you try to save your life, you will lose it. Maybe we are to emphasize the mad joy associated with the risk of loving rather than the danger of losing our lives in the process. This seems like an impossibly naive thing to say today, because we are living with very real fears of death right now. There is the very real fear of threats to our planet, fear of losing our livelihoods, fear of one another, fear of our children's lives, fear of war and rumors of war. This week, a report came out saying that climate change will hit New England much harder and faster than was originally predicted, that Boston may be underwater by the time our grandchildren are middle-aged. This week, Hawaii and Guam are preparing the populace for nuclear attack from North Korea by telling them that they have around 15 minutes from the launch of nuclear missiles to find cover, preferably inside of a concrete building. Our president is promising fire and fury unlike the world has ever seen. And speaking of fire and fury, there was a white supremacist neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, Virginia this weekend. angry, mostly white men with Nazi flags and Confederate flags and torches flooded the UVA campus chanting, "You will not replace us," and blood and soil and white lives matter. Their rhetoric promises violence, promotes violence, and not surprisingly, violence erupted. One man drove a car into a sea of counter-protesters. 19 were injured. One woman was killed. Charlottesville had to declare a state of emergency and call the National Guard this weekend. People of faith praying inside a church that love would overcome violence were surrounded and trapped inside the church by the torch-bearing mob on Friday night. This fire and fury, my friends, is not unlike the world has never seen. In fact, we've seen this all before. In fact, we've seen this all before. The difference is these white supremacists are no longer wearing sheets over their heads. They have been emboldened and normalized. They are buying their tiki torches from Walmart's backyard section and taking to the streets. And they are not just from the South, my friends. They are coming to a town near you soon. They are our neighbors and our co-workers. Our president said that there are many sides to what happened in Charlottesville, but I only see two sides, the side of love and the side of fear. Jesus stands on the side of love and is calling us to get out of the boat before the tide of hate sinks us all. He will hold us up. The country and this world are alive with danger, nuclear anger, the kind of rage that poisons the people and the earth irreparably. We are dying. Perhaps it is a mistake to be so cautious. Our president missed the opportunities to say this yesterday, so I will. This is not who we are. And you and I were made for such a time as this. The church was made for such a time as this. The most hopeful footage from Charlottesville yesterday was my interfaith clergy colleagues linking arms, standing between the armed white supremacists and the counter-protesters, praying and singing, "This little light of mine, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Beloved, we follow a Savior who reminds us whose we are, to whom we belong. A God so loving that she draws all of us home. We may be fearful, but we were made to fly. So let us do at last what we came here for. Jesus says to us, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. Get out of the boat and follow me. If you sink, I will pull you up." I have told you this story before, but one of my favorite writers, Glennon Doyle, was watching footage of the civil rights era with her young children last year. And one of them asked her, "Mama, if we were around then, we would have marched, right?" And before she could answer in the affirmative, her other daughter said, "I don't know. I mean, we're not marching now. The children will lead us." So, beloved, if you and I are not marching now, it is time to march. In the midst of this fire and fury, we must risk it all for love. We must show up to fight against white supremacy with the power of God's love. We must risk putting our bodies on the line, standing with arms linked, singing "This Little Light of Mine." We must risk loving this earth and the people in it. We must risk jumping off of the cliff in the dark, trusting the water will hold us. We must risk getting out of the boat and walking toward love. Even if we are afraid we will sink, we must stop being cautious with our love and lavish it on the stranger and the enemy. Let's do at last what we came here for. We must love this broken, terrifying world with mad joy and wild abandon. Why love what you must lose? There is nothing else to love. When my colleague Meg Barnhouse asked Julian of Norwich how the heck she can say over and over again that all will be well, when there is disease and cruelty and loneliness and pain and sorrow and war and hunger and shame, she imagines Julian saying, "I know. It's too much. It brought me to my knees when I heard, all will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well." Baby girl, do you not know about tenderness? And baby girl, do you not know about friends? She said, baby girl, do you not know about the Spirit? She said, baby girl, do you not know it's only love that never ends? And she said, all will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. She said, all will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. Beloved, waste your hearts on fear no more. It's only love that never ends. Amen.
Amen.